You've probably seen the headlines. Multiple job holders in America are at record highs. Millions of people working two, sometimes three jobs. And the narrative you're being fed is simple. People need extra money. The cost of living is high. Wages are low, so people are hustling. Right? Wrong. What I'm about to tell you is going to completely change how you see the American workforce. Because yes, millions of Americans are working multiple jobs. But the reason why is far more disturbing than anyone is talking about. And once you understand what's really happening, you'll see that this isn't just about money. This is about something much bigger. Something that's quietly reshaping society in ways we're only beginning to understand. Stay with me, because by the end of this video you're going to see the economy and your own life completely differently. Let's start with the facts. According to recent Bureau of Labor Statistics data, over 8 million Americans are working multiple jobs. That's the highest number on record, and the percentage of workers holding multiple jobs has jumped significantly in just the past few years. But here's where it gets interesting. When economists and media outlets report on this, they say it's about supplementing income. People need extra cash to cover bills. And sure, for some people that's true, but that explanation doesn't match what we're actually seeing on the ground. Because when you dig into who's taking these second jobs, something strange emerges. It's not just low-wage workers at McDonald's picking up shifts at Target. It's middle-class professionals. It's people with college degrees. It's folks making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year at their primary job. People who by traditional metrics should be doing fine, and they're driving for Uber at night. They're doing freelance work on weekends. They're selling things online, running side businesses, working remote contract gigs. And when you ask these people why they're doing it, the answers aren't what you'd expect. Sure, some say they need the money, but a significant number say something else entirely. They say things like, I don't trust my main job anymore, or I need a backup plan, or I want to be ready for when things change. That's not about supplemental income. That's about fear. That's about survival instinct. That's about people who see something coming and are preparing for it. And they're right to be afraid, because what's happening in the American economy right now is something we've never seen before. And it's forcing millions of people into a new survival strategy that looks like hustling, but is actually something much more calculated. Here's what no one is talking about. The collapse of job security trust. For decades, the deal was simple. You got a job. You worked hard. You were loyal to the company. And in return, the company was loyal to you. You had stability. You had benefits. You had a pension. You could plan your life around your job. That deal is dead. And everyone knows it. Over the past 2 decades, we've seen wave after wave of layoffs. Not because companies were failing, many were posting record profits, but because of restructuring or optimization or maximizing shareholder value. Entire departments eliminated overnight. People who'd been with a company for 10, 15, 20 years, gone in an instant. And then came the pandemic. Suddenly, millions of people lost their jobs through no fault of their own. Some got them back, others didn't. But everyone learned the same lesson. Your job can disappear at any moment, and the company won't hesitate to cut you loose if it's convenient for them. This created a fundamental shift in how people think about work. They stopped seeing their employer as a partner or a family terms companies love to use, and started seeing them as a risk, a single point of failure in their financial life, a vulnerability. And smart people don't leave themselves vulnerable. So they started building redundancies. They started diversifying their income streams the same way investors diversify their portfolios. Not because they want to work 60 or 70 hours a week, most of them are exhausted, but because they feel they have no choice. This is what's really driving the multiple job phenomenon. It's not about affording luxuries or even keeping up with inflation. It's about de-risking your life. It's about making sure that if one income stream gets cut off, you have another one. It's about never being in a position where losing one job means losing everything. And here's the really disturbing part. They're right to think this way. Because what's happening in the corporate world right now validates every bit of that fear. There's another reason people are scrambling to create multiple income sources, and it's even more unsettling than the trust collapse. They can see what's coming. They can see automation, artificial intelligence, and technological displacement accelerating at a pace that's genuinely alarming. We're not talking about sci-fi future stuff anymore. This is happening right now. Customer service jobs being replaced by chatbots and AI. accounting and bookkeeping work being automated by software, content creation being partially automated, legal research being done by AI, even medical diagnostics increasingly being handled by algorithms. You might be thinking, sure, but those are low-skill jobs. And you'd be wrong. White-collar, educated professional positions are increasingly at risk. The jobs that people thought were safe, the ones their parents told them to go to college for, are being automated or offshored or eliminated. And workers can feel it. They see their companies investing heavily in new technologies. They see positions not being refilled when people leave. They see their workloads increasing because technology is expected to make them more, quote, seven. They see the writing on the wall. So what do? They start building skills and income sources in areas that are harder to automate. They start freelancing. They start learning new technologies. They pivot to work that requires human creativity, human connection, human judgment, the things AI can't easily replicate. Yet, this isn't about making extra money for a vacation. This is about career survival. This is about staying relevant and employable in an economy that's changing faster than most people realize. And the smartest workers, the ones who are paying attention, they're not waiting to get laid off before they figure out their next move. They're building their lifeboats while they still have a paycheck. They're working 2 or 3 jobs not because they need the money today, but because they might desperately need those income streams tomorrow. But there's another dimension to this that's equally important: benefits. Specifically, the disappearance of real benefits in American jobs. Healthcare in America is tied to employment. That's how the system works. You get a job. You get health insurance through that job. And as long as you keep that job, you're covered. Lose the job, lose the coverage. It's a system that creates enormous vulnerability. And increasingly, employers are cutting benefits or shifting costs to employees. Higher premiums, higher deductibles, more out-of-pocket costs, worse coverage. Some companies have stopped offering health insurance to part-time employees altogether. Or they keep workers just under the hour threshold to avoid having to provide benefits. So what are people doing? They're working multiple jobs to cobble together an income that can afford private health insurance or marketplace plans. Or they're working one job for the benefits and another job for actual livable income because the job with benefits doesn't pay enough. It gets worse. Pensions are gone for most workers. 401k matching has been reduced or eliminated at many companies. Paid time off is shrinking. Job security is non-existent. The entire benefit structure that made full-time employment attractive has been systematically dismantled. And companies wonder why employees aren't loyal anymore. Why people job hop every 2 or 3 years. Why workers have one foot out the door. It's because the deal has been broken. Employers betrayed the social contract first, and workers are simply responding rationally. Multiple jobs isn't about greed or hustle culture. It's about people trying to create for themselves the security and stability that employers no longer provide. They're building their own safety net because they can't rely on anyone else to do it. Now, let's talk about the part that is about money, but not in the way you think. Yes, inflation has been brutal. Yes, the cost of living has skyrocketed. Yes, wages haven't kept pace. We all know this. But here's what's really happening. People aren't working second jobs to buy more stuff. They're working second jobs to maintain the standard of living they used to have with one job. Think about that. Your parents' generation could afford a house, 2 cars, raise kids, and save for retirement on a single income. Now, most families need 2 incomes just to get by. And increasingly, those 2 incomes aren't enough. So people add a 3rd income, a 4th. This isn't economic progress. This is economic regression, disguised as hustle culture. And here's the trap. The more people work multiple jobs, the more it becomes normalized. Employers look at workers who are already exhausted from juggling multiple jobs and think, quote, 9. So expectations increase, workloads increase, and the pressure never lets up. Meanwhile, the extra money people make from their second and third jobs doesn't actually improve their lives. It goes straight to covering increased costs. Higher rent, higher food prices, higher insurance, higher everything. They're running faster and faster just to stay in place. This is what economists call a, quote, 10. You're expending more and more energy but not actually going anywhere. You're working 2 jobs and still living paycheck to paycheck. Working 3 jobs and still unable to save for emergencies. And the psychological toll of this is massive. People are burned out. They're exhausted. They're stressed. They're working so many hours they barely see their families. They don't have time for hobbies, for community, for rest. Their entire existence becomes about work and sleep and then more work. This isn't sustainable. Something has to break. And increasingly, what's breaking is people. But here's where this gets really dark. There are people who benefit from this system. People who want you working multiple jobs. Because when you're working 2 or 3 jobs, when you're exhausted, when you're stressed, when you're just trying to survive, you don't have time or energy to ask bigger questions. You don't have time to organize with other workers. You don't have time to demand better wages or working conditions. You don't have time to vote or engage politically. You don't have time to build community or solidarity with your neighbors. You're atomized, isolated, powerless. And that's exactly what certain powerful interests want. A workforce that's too busy and too tired to fight back. A population that's too stressed to think critically about the system they're trapped in. This is why hustle culture gets celebrated in media and popular culture. Why working multiple jobs gets framed as entrepreneurship and ambition, rather than as a symptom of a broken system. Because if people recognize that needing 3 jobs to survive is a systemic failure, they might demand systemic change. But if you can convince people that working themselves to death is actually a virtue, that it's about being a quote 12 or quote 13, then they won't question why the system requires them to do this in the first place. The gig economy, the side hustle, the freelance grind. These are marketed as freedom and flexibility. But for most people, they're neither. They're precarity rebranded. Their instability sold as opportunity. Their exploitation dressed up as empowerment. And millions of Americans have bought into this narrative. At least partially. They blame themselves for not hustling hard enough rather than questioning why hustling so hard is necessary. They see their exhaustion as personal failure rather than structural violence. That's how you keep a population compliant while extracting maximum value from them. You make them think it's their fault. You make them think everyone else is doing fine, and they're the only ones struggling. You isolate them and exhaust them and keep them too busy to realize they're not alone. So what does all of this actually mean? Where is this heading? We're watching the collapse of the middle class in real time. We're watching the American dream already on life support flatline. We're watching a society stratify into a small class of people who own assets and businesses and capital, and a large class of people who have to work multiple jobs just to survive. This is neo-feudalism. This is a return to a world where most people work constantly just to exist, while a tiny elite controls most of the wealth and resources. And the multiple job phenomenon is both a symptom of this and an accelerant. Because when everyone is working multiple jobs, wages stay low. When everyone is desperate for any income they can get, employers have all the power. When everyone is competing for gigs and side hustles, there's no collective bargaining power. It's a race to the bottom. And millions of Americans are running as fast as they can. The other thing this means is a fundamental change in what work is and what life is. Previous generations worked to live. This generation and the next lives to work. There's no separation anymore. Your car is a workplace. Your home is a workplace. Your evenings and weekends are work time. You're always on, always hustling, always grinding. And we're losing things that matter. Community, family time, rest, culture, the things that make life worth living beyond mere survival. Those are luxuries now. Those are things only people who don't need multiple jobs can afford. This is what's really at stake. Not just individual financial survival, but the survival of a way of life where people have time to be human, to be more than just economic units, to exist as something other than a collection of revenue streams. So yes, millions of Americans are working multiple jobs. But it's not because they're ambitious go-getters chasing their dreams. It's not because they want extra spending money for luxuries. It's because they're terrified. Terrified of losing their main job. Terrified of automation. Terrified of not being able to afford healthcare or housing or food. Terrified of a future that feels increasingly unstable and unpredictable. They're building lifeboats because they can't see the ship is sinking. They're diversifying income because they know they can't trust any single employer. They're working themselves to exhaustion because the alternative feels like financial ruin. This is the reality behind the statistics. This is the truth behind the headlines. And this is something you need to understand whether you're working multiple jobs yourself or whether you're one bad month away from needing to. The system is broken. It's not working for regular people, And the fact that millions are forced to work multiple jobs just to survive is not a feature, it's a bug. It's a failure, and it's unsustainable. If you're working multiple jobs right now, know that you're not failing. You're not lazy. You're not bad with money. You're responding rationally to an irrational system. And if you're not working multiple jobs yet, but you're feeling the pressure, feeling the instability, feeling like your one job isn't enough anymore, you're not imagining it. You're seeing the same thing millions of others are seeing. This is one of the defining issues of our time, and it's not being talked about honestly. The narrative is hustle culture and entrepreneurship, but the reality is fear and survival and systemic exploitation. Share this video. Talk about this. Let's start having honest conversations about what's really happening in the American workforce. Subscribe if you want more content that tells you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Thanks for watching. And whatever you're dealing with, I see you. You're not alone in this.